What's up, DS3 TV? We are back for another video. This one is Avengers Endgame, How History Defines the Avengers, Wisecrack Edition. So this is by Wisecrack. I have never seen this channel before, but this is a recommended video for one of the subscribers. So you know what's the deal. You can always comment stuff in the comment section down below, and I will react to it. Also, I'm thinking about maybe doing some live streams on YouTube, some editing live streams and stuff like that for some of the movie reviews that I want to do, because I do have a movie review channel. I might make a post about that to kind of shout it out later this week. Yeah, so let's get into it. Also, yeah. Okay, so okay, cool. Alright, so yeah, let's get into it. And also, follow the Twitch channel, click the heart when you click the link down below, and click my Twitch, click the heart down below, and you will get and you can so you can follow me, and I will be streaming there a lot. So yeah, let's get into it and play.
This video is brought to you by Wix. Hey Wisecrack, Jared here, and today we're talking about a film that's almost as lucrative as that blue furry remake of Dances with Wolves, Avengers Endgame. It's the culmination of 21 films made over the course of more than a decade by dozens of different writers and directors. And considering how so many similarly large projects have crashed and burned, we might have expected a similar fate for the MCU. But 2-point-whatever billion at the box office certainly suggests that there's something about Endgame that resonates with audiences. And while it didn't go the way we were predicting after Infinity War, we at Wisecrack found it to be a pretty satisfying conclusion, and not just because it culminates with a battle so epic that it makes Pelennor Fields look like a small skirmish.
By the way, my favorite suit from, my favorite Spider-Man suit ever is the Iron Spider-Man suit, but I do like the comic book version better than the one that was in the MCU. But we're not gonna worry about that. Also, did want to talk about what's going on, basically how Marvel could just not cease to be a thing, basically, if the lawsuit goes through or whatever. Because I was hearing about that today, so that's kind of crazy. But yeah, so I don't know. Let's get back into the video though.
Was Endgame able to provide a fulfilling conclusion to so many narratives? To answer that, we're going to be diving deep into each member of Marvel's Trinity: Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man. Three heroes who have a variety of differences in powers, personalities, and philosophies, but one of their main differences is the way that their arcs are structured. Not only do each of the big three embody different methods writers use to dramatize character growth, but they also align pretty closely with some of the different ways philosophers have thought about the arc of human history. And it's our contention that by building off these traditions that are so central to our understanding of human history, the Marvel movies are able to build up to conclusions that strike us as fitting and emotionally resonant. Welcome to this Wisecrack edition on Avengers Endgame, and in case you were dusted out of existence for the past 10 years and were just snapped back, spoilers ahead for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I mean, yeah, why would you want to watch Endgame if you haven't watched the other ones? Honestly, Endgame is literally, yeah, it's all spoilers. So,
But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Wix. In our recent video on automation, we asked you to send us your Wix websites, and wow, I was honestly taken aback at some of the submissions we got. You guys make some awesome stuff. Today I want to feature the work of Angela. Angela's Wix site showcases her going to wix.com/wisecrack and send it to us when you're done. Plus it's free, so why not? And now, back to the show. Let's start with the God of Thunder. Thor's arc throughout the films is cyclical. He undergoes a constant process of being on top of the world, only to be brought back down, learning and relearning the same lessons. The first Thor film begins with him about to be crowned King of Asgard, but right before his coronation, Thor's pride and combativeness in invading Jotunheim result in him being cast out of Asgard and unworthy of wielding his hammer. Probably the worst day of his 1500-year-long life. While he's exiled on Earth, he learns the lesson Odin wanted, to not be so bellicose and vainglorious. As a result, he becomes worthy once again, ending right where he started as the Prince of Asgard. The Dark World starts with Thor riding high as he restores peace to the Nine Realms, but Within a day, he's brought back low as his girlfriend is infected with space sludge, kidnapped by an evil elf, and both his mother and brother die. His lot here has fallen ever lower
And the crazy thing is like how much he does love his brother. It's just that, you know, he's evil, so he does like backstab him sometimes. But yeah, he still does have love for his brother, which, you know, is a realistic thing.
When he was exiled. But by the end, he's saving all 9 realms yet again. Of all the films, it fits most messily into the paradigm, but there's a reason it's widely considered one of the worst Marvel movies. Thor Ragnarok starts off with Thor on top, saving Asgard from Ragnarok by defeating the fire giant Surtur. But again, within a day, he's brought back to his lowest point ever when his father dies, his hammer breaks, and he's sold into slavery on Sakaar.
The slaves have armed themselves.
I don't like that word.
Through the ordeal, he learns the lesson that Asgard is not a place, but a people. As a result, his arc in the film ends right where it started, with him saving the people of Asgard from Ragnarok, even as the place itself gets death-starred. He's also finally crowned king, but the grand cycle in which all these smaller cycles fit isn't over. As King Thor, he's briefly on top, but Infinity War begins with Thanos handing him his ass and killing half his people. He's briefly back up when he acquires Stormbreaker and the power to off Grimace, but quickly back down again when killing him comes too late. He undergoes a self-imposed exile to his man cave, becoming a slovenly mess and getting pwned.
Hey, come on. Everybody loves Bro Thor. Come on. You can't tell me you didn't love Bro Thor.
At Fortnite. This time the lesson he learns is to accept himself for who he is instead of who he's supposed to be. While Asgardian law and his own ambitions always told him he was supposed to be king, his conversation with his mother reminds him that he is at heart a hero and a warrior. So it's appropriate that after he helps the fellow Avengers defeat Thanos that he abdicates the throne to go off with his friends on awesome adventures all over the universe, ending right back on top. There's some forward progression overall. Thor goes from coveting kingship to no longer desiring it, but for the most part that process of growth is circuitous. Thor expresses this himself in Ragnarok.
Dear brother, becoming predictable. I trust you. You betray me round and round in circles we go. See, Loki, life is about growth. It's about change.
In addition to his own personal arc cycling back on itself time and again, the same pattern repeats itself across Asgardian history. Thor does not merely succeed his father on the throne, he recapitulates his father's most noteworthy act, losing an eye in exchange for wisdom. Thor in the films and the comics is based off the pagan deity from Norse mythology. As such, it's particularly fitting that this cyclical storytelling structure should be employed for the character. Many ancient philosophies and religions, such as the Stoics, Hindus, Maya, and Aztec, all conceived of history at the grandest scale as cyclical. From the fragments of Norse mythology that have been passed down to us through works like Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda and Poetic Edda, the Norse are believed to have thought about history in a similar way. In the Eddas, the original man and woman, Ask and Embla, first emerged from the wood of ash and elm. Our current cycle of history concludes with Ragnarok, and afterwards the cycle starts anew with the only 2 survivors, Leif and Leifthrassir. Likewise, Richard Wagner captured this cyclicality of Norse and Teutonic mythology in his Ring Cycle, which begins with the Rhinegold being stolen from the Rhine Maidens, and after much turmoil resulting in Ragnarok, ends with the gold being reclaimed by the Rhine, right where it started. Neil Gaiman, in his recent retelling of Norse mythology, makes this even more explicit when the 6 gods that survive Ragnarok find a chess set depicting the gods of old in the field where Asgard once stood. They begin to play a game, and as they move the pieces, the drama unfolds exactly as before. Just as the whole cosmological cycle in Norse mythology is always circling back to where it started, so too is Thor's character arc. Captain America, on the other hand, basically has no character arc. The world may change around him, but he doesn't change with it.
He really never does, which, I mean, Cap doesn't really have to, but yeah.
Famed screenwriting guru Robert McKee criticizes such characters in his book Story.
When inner life and outer appearance are, like a block of cement of one substance, the world becomes a list of repetitious, predictable behaviors. It's not as if such a character isn't credible, shallow, non-dimensional people exist, but they're boring.
I mean, like, Captain America's my favorite, like, superhero out of all. But you know, out of like the original Avengers. But yeah, I can definitely say that he's like, he doesn't like have a character growth that much, you know. It's kind of different, but yeah, I mean, you don't have to have a character. I mean, you don't. It's people that are one-dimensional in the world, and yeah, they are just boring, which is true. But also, like, I kind of quote Martin Scorsese here, like, yeah, Marvel isn't cinema. It's not movies, because they don't follow a usual movie progression that a movie would. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's bad. You know, saying that is not you know, a movie, but you know, it's just in its own category at this point, I would say. You know, just to be honest.
The kind of character he's describing sounds like someone audiences wouldn't want to watch, especially a hero who stays the same for 7 movies, but Captain America is clearly an exception to that rule. There's an initial physical change upon taking the super soldier serum at the start of the first film, but after that, the All-American that people see on the outside is exactly who he is on the inside, and neither changes.
Gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Even Captain America going up against the American and global governments in Winter Soldier and Civil War don't reveal any new facets of the character that we didn't already know before he roided out. He explained to Dr. Abraham Erskine when they first meet that his patriotism isn't jingoistic, and that he just wants to stand up to bullies.
I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies.
Project Insight was secretly surveilling American civilians and executing them without due process. The Sokovia Accords barred Good Samaritans from helping those in need and reserved the right to send the Avengers on missions they might find unconscionable, making them more mercenaries than heroes. Both Insight and the Accords sounded like the work of bullies to Rogers, so he fought them. That inner strength is a trait which persists through all the films, beginning before his transformation as he stands up to multiple thugs bigger than himself, and continues on, always getting up and standing alone in the face of overwhelming odds.
If I see a situation pointed south, I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
No, you don't.
This is played straight as a callback in Civil War, when Iron Man beats him down, only for Rogers to repeat his quip from the first film.
I could do this all day.
It's lampooned in Endgame when Cap confronts a past version of himself who knocks him on his butt, with the doppelganger also announcing,
I can do this all day.
to which the future Rogers replies, yeah, I know. Even Steve is self-aware of the fact that his unchanging nature makes him predictable. But the trope is treated with seriousness again when Captain America, after being beat down by Thanos and having his shield shattered, still gets to his feet, ready to take on him and an entire army single-handedly. And as predictable as it was anything but boring.
Assemble.
Even his cheery optimism is inexhaustible, as shown in Endgame when he's able to see the bright side of life after Thanos' snapping. Half of all life may be dead, but at least there are whales in the Hudson again. And in the same scene, he astutely observes his own lack of character development to Black Widow when he says, other people change, but we don't. Like his inner character, Steve Rogers' personal philosophy is equally unbending. This is best summarized by Agent Sharon Carter. In Civil War, Sharon quotes verbatim Cap's most famous speech from the comics.
Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right, even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
This unwavering commitment to his moral duties is shown again in Infinity War, where he refuses to sacrifice Vision to stop Thanos, despite the compelling moral calculus of sacrificing a single life to save trillions.
We don't trade lives, Vision.
Captain America's unchanging nature is even more extreme in the comics. In Mark Millar's Ultimates, Steve Rogers goes straight old man yelling at Cloud about all the ways in which life has changed since the 1940s, from the higher price of clothes and coffee to the way women dress. He spends his days going to the same decrepit gym that's been in his neighborhood since his boyhood, piecing together his old record collection, and spending time with other World War II vets well into their 90s. It might seem like the films portray a Steve Rogers that's seemingly more adaptable to change.
Things aren't so bad. Food's a lot better. We used to boil everything. No polio's good. Internet, so helpful.
But in many important ways, the times don't change any more than Captain America himself. He was fighting Hydra in 1945 and still fighting them in 2014. Rather than a cyclical version of history, Captain America presents a belief that certain things are eternal, enduring regardless of how much time passes or what new circumstances come about. He shares this view of history with the author of Ecclesiastes, who wrote,
What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun.
Among the things which both Steve and Solomon would both agree are immutable throughout the ages are,
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
there's a fixed moral law which doesn't change just because the stakes are high, and human nature doesn't change whether it's 1945 or 2019 or 10th century BCE. And because people are always the same, so are the problems they cause. Thanos was just a more successful Hitler, who was just a more successful Pharaoh, all of whom are more successful than Loki.
That's actually pretty much true, though. Like, he's definitely just a more successful fucking Hitler at this point.
But the same unchanging human nature is also responsible for the courage that caused people to defend the plains of Wakanda and storm the beaches at Normandy.
The last time I was in Germany and saw a man standing above everybody else, we ended up disagreeing.
Heroes like Cap are nothing new. They're a steadfast response to a world that continues to face the same perennial problems. Despite being a man out of time, Captain America is relevant in every era. We see this clearest in the comics. In Hickman's Avengers run, the Time Stone sends Captain America to the very end of time. There, Iron Lad tells him, the perspective you're talking about, it's based on the moralities of a society of individuals and not a collective one. Remember, I lived in your now, and that thinking just has no place in the future. To which Cap replied, well, it's too bad I've never really gotten over the past. Like Steve Rogers, Tony Stark is a man out of time, but there's a reason they so often find themselves on opposite sides. The contrast between Captain America and Iron Man is best explained by Reed Richards.
You are a good man. You do good things. Tony, however, it is not as simple as us. He's a future man, trapped in the now. A prisoner, raging against the slow crawl of evolution. His relationships, his morality, his ethics, all of these are highly adaptable, malleable to what he would call the greater good of mankind's necessary survival and undeniable progress.
Tony Stark's character arc is all about progress. At the beginning of the first Iron Man, he's completely self-centered, unconcerned by his nickname,
The Merchant of Death.
or the accusations of war profiteering. But upon seeing the harm his weapons have caused in the hands of terrorists, Stark changes his mind and decides Stark Industries will no longer design weapons. By the beginning of Iron Man 2, he is no longer personally selfish, but his political philosophy, Randian objectivism, is still explicitly founded on self.
What's up, DS3 TV? We are back for for the rest of this video, because the camera died. So yeah, let's get back into it. And, yeah, let's.
Rand believed maximizing one's own self-interest is the only rational way to live, an idea that was foundational in her defense of laissez-faire capitalism. This philosophy is on full display in Tony's testimony before Congress.
You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
In Avengers, he progresses from selfish to fully self-sacrificial, initially criticizing Cap's willingness to die in the line of duty.
The only thing you really fight for is yourself. You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
I think I would just cut the wire.
Always a way out. You know, you may not be a threat, but you better stop pretending to be a hero.
But by the end of the battle, he shows a willingness to self-sacrifice when he flies the nuke through the wormhole. And while he didn't end up losing his life, the brush with death did leave him psychologically scarred, with the third Iron Man film showing him suffering from severe PTSD as a result. It's still a progression of his character in that he's changed by trauma, even if...
Yeah, and I mean, Tony Stark, like, his past definitely, changed. He still, hates his past, you know? So I could definitely see that, too.
if it's not progress in terms of improvement. Whether his character progression in Civil War is an improvement or just raw change depends on your political leanings. In his support for the Sokovia Accords, Iron Man has abandoned his libertarian leanings in favor of increased government intervention for the sake of a safer and more secure society. This progression is fairly gradual. Initially, he supports the Accords in part because, as a futurist, he sees them as inevitable.
When I realized what my weapons were capable of in the wrong hands, I shut it down and stopped manufacturing.
Tony, you chose to do that. If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
If we don't do this now, it's going to be done to us later. That's the fact.
By Endgame, both his personal and political progression reach their conclusions, finding him at the opposite side of the spectrum from where he started. Politically, he's completely abandoned any libertarian leanings he once had, blaming Cap for the snapping because Steve wasn't willing to violate freedoms and liberties in order to, quote, make a suit of armor around the whole world. Personally, he fully goes through with making the ultimate sacrifice, not merely of his life, but in doing so, widowing Pepper and leaving Morgan fatherless in the process. Just as the snap cost Thanos everything, it did the same for Stark. Stark's character, philosophy, and tech all progress fairly linearly. The understanding of history as a linear progression from a more primitive past into a technologically and socially superior future is common among a number of prominent philosophers. Hegel saw history as advancing inexorably toward the German state. Karl Marx conceived of history similarly, albeit as a progression toward communism. For Francis Fukuyama, history had been on a linear path of progress, but history ended with the fall of the Soviet Union and the emergence of liberal democracy worldwide, which, even he admits, did not turn out quite like he conceived. As a futurist, Tony too sees history as a linear and inexorable progression, though he conceives of the end in a far different manner than Hegel or Marx or Fukuyama. He saw the Accords as an inevitable part of that process, but only because of what the world would be up against at the end.
A hostile alien army came charging through a hole in space. We're standing 300 feet below it.
We're the Avengers. We can bust arms dealers all the livelong day, but that up there, that's the end game.
A more optimistic view comes from Marvel heroes such as...
Which was a very subtle way to talk about Endgame before it came out.
Reed Richards, who calls Tony Stark the future man at the end of history, what everyone else is slowly but surely advancing towards. If that's the case, it's entirely appropriate that his character arc in the MCU should be marked by straightforward linear advancement. Perhaps the one view of history that all three heroes conform to is Thomas Carlyle's Great Man Theory, who wrote in On Heroes, Hero Worship, and the Heroic in History, the history of the world is but the biography of great men. Certainly the history of the Marvel Universe from 1942 through 2023 is basically a biography of the various members of the Avengers, and none more so than Tony, Thor, and Cap. Each had done more to either accelerate the course of history or change its path altogether than anyone else of their age. This same sentiment is echoed in the comics by Captain America as he exhorts his fellow Illuminati. We shape the world, it does not shape us. As we've seen, this is particularly true of changeless Steve Rogers, but even Tony as he walks the path of progress, and Thor as he turns up and down the Wheel of Fortune, both shape the world far more significantly than it does them. But we don't love these characters simply because they're the Napoleons and Caesars of their world, seemingly single-handedly charting the course of history. No. We love them in part because there's an appropriateness between the core concept of each character and how their arcs play out. And in the moments when Marvel chooses to break from that clearly established pattern, it's always a deliberate exception and to great effect. Such as Iron Man's final quip as he snaps circling back to the end of the first film,
I am Iron Man.
or Steve Rogers finally accepting that he'd done his duty as a soldier and finally progressing forward with a life of his own. But what do you think, Wisecrack? Did Marvel marry their heroes' core characteristics and story structure in a smart and satisfying way, or did all the arcs end as unsatisfyingly as a certain show about dragons and ice zombies? Thanks to all our patrons who support the channel and our podcast. Be sure to hit that
Well, that was a good video because I don't think there's anything else left. But yeah, I mean, I think they ended it pretty good. I mean, I don't think it was a bad ending. It wasn't nowhere near the arc of like Game of Thrones. So that's something going for it. But yeah, I mean, Avengers is in like its own class of movies where it doesn't follow any movie path. So I mean, you can kind of go off of it however you want to. But yeah. So yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and also follow me on Twitch because I'm going to be streaming over there hopefully starting this upcoming week I'll start streaming like every day. I'm gonna try to. I'm streaming the day that this video comes out though. So, you know, come over there and hang out. Also, yeah, talk to you guys in the next video, and peace.
Are you fucking kidding me? This doesn't fit. I spent $10 on this shit when I was gone.
Wow.